Today I'm recommending books with a catch. These are all books that have been rated 1 star by Charles. Hi, I'm Steph and I love to read and review and just generally talk about otherworldly stories. If you don't know who Charles is, then you may not have entered deep enough into the queer bookish internet. Charles is this infamous Goodreads reviewer. His account is actually private now, but basically he spends all of his time going around leaving 1-star reviews on queer books. Usually no words, just the 1 star, and these are books that typically haven't even come out yet. At this point he's left nearly 8,000 1-star reviews. There are also people who call themselves like anti-Charles who then go around and leave 5-star reviews on all the books that Charles has given 1-star reviews on to cancel him out. Anyway, Charles sucks, but you can in theory use his account as a way to get recommended reads, and that's what I'm doing for you today. I've picked out 5 amazing queer books, all of which have truly been rated 1 star by Charles on Goodreads. You can go and check it out. I spent a lot of time scrolling through reviews to prove that. Anyway, I'm bringing them all to you so that you can read them and review them and hopefully love them and then leave 5-star reviews to cancel out Charles. If you like a lush, epic fantasy, you've got to check out The Jasmine Throne. It's got this absolutely beautiful writing and this expansive world that only gets better in book 2. So this is dual POV, and the first character that we're following is this disgraced princess. She refused to be burned alive by her brother, and so he locked her away basically to punish her. Her brother is this super obsessive religious ruler, and he's making all of these really cruel decisions for the empire. So the princess is locked away in this temple that has this extreme stairs to get to it. Like, people straight up die trying to get up to this temple. And it's more or less abandoned now, but once it hosted this magical community until it was erased and all of these magical children and others burned to death many years ago. So the princess is locked up there just dreaming of vengeance day in and day out, and our other POV is a maidservant who has been hired to serve her. And she has these dark secrets about her past that are super dangerous, all about where she came from and her upbringing that she just cannot reveal. So anyway, both of these women obviously have a lot of issues with the empire. And the maidservants people have been brutally colonized. And they find themselves together, and then their paths slowly start to weave together as they realize they may have some similar goals, similar dreams, and also maybe the start of some feelings for each other. There's so much that's really impressively woven into this story. There's a lot of talk about power and its demands and its consequences, its costs, and about vulnerability and what it means to wield vulnerability when you're a woman. Like, is it this big triumph to be open and honest, or is it a weakness, or is it some sort of political cleverness? And then there are questions about freedom and leadership, like, does freedom from colonization require violence? And what are the sacrifices? What are the necessary desecrations you have to make in order to get justice? You've got threads around religion and how it can dangerously corrupt people, like the current leader who uses it to cause harm. But we also see the flip side, where religion causes someone to just kind of retreat from the world and say, hey, you know what, this is not my responsibility, this is not my problem, everything should just be left up to fate in the way of the universe, and I have no stake in this, so don't bother me. Then there's a lot of talk about men and their perhaps inherent violence, and a lot of nature imagery, and we get to see the land fighting back in a magical way. I love this theme in books. So there's a lot to love about this one, and I definitely recommend picking it up. Now let's slightly switch gears into fantastical sci-fi with some space adventures and some delightful chaos. I love Light from Uncommon Stars so much, and when I tell you about it, you're gonna hear the 3 different storylines and think, huh? Like, are these 3 totally separate books? How does this work? But trust me, it works in this sort of brilliant, whimsical way. There are 3 very contrasting tableaus, but putting them side by side elevated them all. It really worked for me. So through line 1 is there's this magical violinist who made this deal with a demon. In exchange for her success and to escape damnation, she has to find and trade in 7 musical souls. And so she's almost done with the contract. She's had 49 years to do it, but she needs one last soul, and she's looking for the perfect musical prodigy. And right on cue, enter a young trans girl who is a brilliant violinist. She had a terrible home life, unfortunately, and abusive family members who didn't accept her, so she ran away. She's trying to find a place where she'll be accepted and also survive, but she also loves her music and she wants to find a way to cultivate her talent. And then the third story is there's this captain of this starship and her crew. They're running away from their home, which is being like undone, it's being destroyed, and so they have to kind of navigate to a new planet and settle down and hide. And her disguise is settling down on Earth and trying to figure out how to successfully run a family donut shop. So yes, this is brilliantly imaginative, and you're gonna fall in love with every part of this cast. And apart from the contrasting storylines, there are also 2 very contrasting tones that this book takes. First, you have this really sweet central theme of home and belongingness and finding community through art. There are a lot of different artists in this book. Of course, there are musicians like we've been talking about, there are also bakers and all different sorts of craftsmanship. And all of these characters have to learn how to claim their place in their family history. They've got to grapple with their identities and figure out how to let in new people and how to create home wherever they are. And there are all these beautiful arcs for all of these characters where they learn and they grow intro a lot. And there's this breathtaking description of music, specifically towards the end. It's so immersive, so beautiful. The descriptions of music and performance are truly like nothing I've ever read before. So you have all this wonderfulness, which is why sometimes people refer to this as like a cozy fantasy or a cozy sci-fi. But I think that's a bit of a dangerous claim for this book because it also does get very, very dark. Specifically around the young trans runaway. Her name is Katrina. She has a really good arc in the end, but for most of the book, like 85% of the book, she's stuck in this sort of self-loathing. She's living in anguish and fear, and she's dealing with a lot of trauma from her past. And then she faces a lot of external triggers as she begins to go more public with her music. There's a lot of hate speech depicted in this book, so if reading about transphobia makes you feel unsafe or really uncomfortable, I would definitely warn you. Again, I really do love it, and it does end in a really sweet place, but that is just a big warning for anyone picking this up that it is a journey to get there. Now let's switch gears super drastically. We're gonna hop over to a super sweet, this is a book that I actually would call cozy, a graphic novel. This one is a young adult book. It's called The Pirate and the Porcelain Girl, and it features sapphic pirates, so like what more could you really ask for? Our main character is absolutely in love with this girl, and she's also very self-conscious, and she wants to be perfect. She wants to change anything about herself in order to be perfect. She ends up praying to a god, and she asks this god, like, please make me perfect, and then the god grants her wish, but in a very twisted way. She becomes perfect, as in she becomes perfect porcelain. Her skin is literally breakable, which is terrifying, and she has this very anxious and wealthy father who hides her away. And he partners with this religious group who kind of reveres her because she is this beautiful porcelain thing whose wish has been granted, so they're like this army that protects her. And all she wants to do is get out and find this girl, but she is trapped. Then enter a super disgraced and super broke pirate captain. She's got a super loyal crew, they adore her, but she's been through it and she's got a lot to prove. And when she crosses paths with the porcelain girl, she agrees to help her and help her escape and find the girl she loves and kind of take her on this quest. And then the two of them actually start to form an unexpected bond. This is a really sweet and really fast-paced story. I loved the elements of found family and also the budding romance and so many lovely life lessons. The illustrations were really fun, and honestly, I haven't read a lot of graphic novels, so I don't have a lot to compare it to, but I was immersed. I guess that's all you can really ask for, right? The characters were also really bodily diverse, which I thought was great. There is one little moment of loss, but other than that, the plot is very light, very heartwarming. The dialogue is really goofy too, but in a charming way. And there's strong messaging around accepting yourself and loving yourself and also setting firm boundaries, which, like, hell yeah. Leaning a bit more into romance with a fun, futuristic sci-fi world, let's talk about Junker 7. Our main character is a disabled and autistic junker, which basically means that they hunt around for scraps and they sell spare parts in order to make ends meet. And sometimes they take on slightly bigger bounties, but really they're just hopping from job to job and doing their best to survive and to have enough gas to keep their ship going and feed their little goldfish and just live a quiet life. In this world, there's this really nasty, rising political leader who is sort of the cause for all this escalating transphobia and violence. And there's also the simmering galactic revolution, which is led by this activist who's also like a social media rock star. Anyway, then the junker is offered this really high-paying job, like a job that would make them all set, not have to worry about anything for years and years and years, a truly ridiculous amount of money. All they have to do is transport the activist around the galaxy and keep her safe from the intergalactic police force and also all of the supporters of this political leader and everyone that's trying to hurt her or just take her down. And they're like, fine, I'll take it, but this is just a job. It's just a job. I stay out of things. I'm not interested in being involved politically, but then as they get to know her, they slowly start being swept up in her cause. And it's really lovely to read about the shift from being like a hesitant outsider to being involved in the community and embracing revolutionary change. They also work through a lot of internalized ableism. Like initially they think that because they're autistic, they have to be a loner, and it was nice to watch them unpack that and make friends. I thought the depictions of being autistic and being physically disabled in space were really thoughtful and really well written, especially around the sensory issues. And like I said, they've also got this super cute goldfish, which I feel like goldfishes in space, that's so fun. The romance is very sweet. It's very quick, but it's very charming. I really appreciate it when you get to see two halves of a relationship care for each other, but also challenge each other and make each other grow. We do also get some fun, slower, sort of slice of life moments. As far as I know, there's only this one book officially now, but I do think the ending, and just based on other things I've read, that this is planned to be a series. There are a lot of things budding towards the end, and there's also a really hopeful tone tone, so I'm curious to see where this story will go. And last, but far from least, I want to talk about The Fall That Saved Us. This is a cozy sapphic romance with fantasy elements. I am so not a romance reader. I maybe read 1 or 2 romance books a year, and that's only if they end up in my lap, like if someone says you need to read this or something about them really compels me. And I did end up having a good time with this one. So it's this romance between this angel who's an ex-demon hunter and a succubus. And this book contains a lot more than romance because it's also about finding home and healing and surviving toxic families and creating your new family. So we follow this ex-demon hunter who has just run away from her toxic family, and she's trying to figure out how to create this life that's all her own. She really wants to figure out who she is apart from her duties as a demon hunter. And she ends up owning this bookstore and then living above the bookstore. I mean, talk about a dream, right? And you know, things are moving along slowly but surely. She's a little afraid to trust anyone, but she's made like sort of a friend or two, and she's just working on existing. And then suddenly this succubus shows up in her bookstore, and so she's really worried that she's like taunting her. In the past, she would have had to hunt down the succubus and kill her, like that's what her family would have expected her to do. And since she's actively resisting her family, she hesitates, but she's not sure whether she should trust her own instincts or kind of be open to something new and to like relearning everything she thought she knew. And so she gives her a chance, and their relationship slowly deepens because they actually realize they have a lot in common. They both have a lot of past trauma that they're working on healing. And of course, people notice and people talk and word spreads that they're together, so then they face all of these dangers from angels and demons and other magical entities. The world building definitely isn't the focus here. Like the little elements of lore we get are fun, they're nice, but they're definitely not the focus. Again, romance isn't really my thing, so just a heads up that there are some explicit sexual scenes in here. I just wanted to let you all know because typically I don't recommend that stuff, so you may not expect it. You don't like open this book at work and be like, oh my god, what is happening? I am blushing so hard. So yeah, there are some steamy paranormal romance elements, but also a big focus on finding yourself and healing after trauma. And like I said, I found this really compelling. So there you have it. Let's cheers to canceling out Charles. And if you want to dive right into these books and get some reading done, I actually have some community readathons coming up. I'll throw the dates up on screen somewhere. I host these on my Discord, and it's basically like a really fun group chat where we distract each other and have a lot of fun, but also hold each other accountable and get a lot of reading done. You can pop in and out throughout the weekend, even if you just have like an hour on a Sunday, or you can just totally commit and stay up all night reading and challenge yourself. They're really fun and a great way to tackle your TBR and also just kind of get to bond and know each other as a reading community. My Discord is part of my bindery, which is called Celestial, and it is free to join. The free tier gets you access to my Discord, plus this bookshelf that collects all of the books I recommend and kind of links them to the videos so you can search that. It's really, really cool. And also a website that collects all of my content across all of the platforms in one space. And then there's a $5 a month tier where you get exclusive content and more. And the super cool thing about bindery is that if our community gets big enough and engaged enough, we actually have the chance to create our own publishing imprints and publish books together. So if you vibe with my content, it would mean the world to me if you joined, and I can't wait to meet you on Discord. Till next time!